Yo, this is the first video of this video installment series, I guess you would say, where I want to give my opinions and commentary on certain things in hip hop and the music space, I guess you would say. And when I thought of the idea for this video right here, I was like, obviously, that's a no-brainer. Roll it. Now, considering I just found NF maybe 2 years ago at this point, I started at the search, the actual video first, and then I went through the entire storyline, and then I reacted to some of his album, and I've become a fan of NF, and his style and the type of music that he makes and the subject matter that he talks about. It resonates extremely heavily with a lot of people, which is why he has the fan base and the success that he does. But at the same time, he's not exactly accepted into the hip hop or rap culture. He's a rapper, that's what he does, but if you look from an objective standpoint, a non-biased standpoint, he is clearly not acknowledged by hip hop. And for people who are fans of NF, I can definitely understand why that would be confusing, especially, he drops the search and it's amazing, has this grand sound, has a whole theme around it, and then he gets left off the Grammys, and then, all of his music, it kind of stays very niche to his core audience. So I'm here as an NF fan, but primarily a fan of rap music and the culture that surrounds it. I'm here to tell you exactly why he doesn't fit in or isn't acknowledged by hip hop. And it's actually a lot more straightforward than people might think. The first one is going to be because of his upbringing and the way that he became a rapper. Not necessarily his childhood, but the way that he found himself in the rap space. He came up with mixtapes, but he came up kind of in the Christian hip hop space, in Christian music. And that right there is already right out the gate going to alienate him from being seen as a brethren in the hip hop space, because they're two completely different sides. Whenever you have this Christian, not even just hip hop, this Christian artist, you fall into that, I don't even know if I would call it a stigma, you fall into that label that automatically alienates you from the rest of music and the rest of hip hop that is not considered Christian. Even people who are more hip hop driven, for example, Andy Mineo and Lecrae. These are two perfect examples. Lecrae kind of fits in, he kind of can float the line a little more, but Andy Mineo, even someone who is as well versed as he is in hip hop history, he had the traditional I'm gonna become a rapper route mentality, but he fit into the Christian space, and his rap, I would say, it's more traditional hip hop than NF. But even Andy Mineo has a hard time shaking the Christian hip hop side of his name. So even though his style of music fits more, he's still not gonna be as accepted or as talked about in the hip hop space. And then NF even more so. And I know he's not a Christian hip hop artist. He's an artist who's Christian. I know. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. He started in the Christian world. That's a very hard label to shake whenever you're trying to transition into mainstream rap. Even me, being a fan of NF, but primarily a fan of hip hop, I don't even think I would call him a mainstream hip hop artist. He's kind of in his own world. He has this own little niche. He's not a Christian artist, but he's not mainstream. He's kind of just NF. So on to reason number 2 is obviously he's a white artist. The only white artist that I can think of off the top of my head that have been accepted into mainstream hip hop are going to be obviously Mac Miller, RIP. He's more of just a straight up artist. I don't even think at this point, at his passing, I would call him a rapper, because he did everything, that dude. He was clearly multi-talented in the music space. And then obviously Eminem, who is arguably the greatest rapper of all time, but even Eminem still has hard time with people saying that he's a guest in the house of hip hop. How do you expect NF to be accepted into rap when someone, Eminem, whose impact is astronomically greater, even he is still being denied by certain people by saying he's a guest in the house of hip hop? If Eminem can't be fully accepted in by everybody, then there's no way that NF is gonna be. No matter how much I don't agree with the argument that people make that white rappers are guests in the house of hip hop, I do not agree with that, but I understand the thought process as to why people say that. Rap was an art form that came out of the struggle of living in the ghetto and living in Section 8 and living in New York and the whole thing that surrounds hip hop, and that is something that, generally speaking, Caucasian people did not experience. They did not experience the same upbringing that hip hop did. But that's the thought process that goes behind people saying that white people are guests in the house of hip hop. So point number 2.1 is also going to be the fact that he is 100%, no matter what, going to always be compared to Eminem, and he will never, unfortunately, for his fans at least, he will never be at the success level that Eminem was at any point. Moving on to point number 3, that's gonna be his subject matter and his rhyme style. His subject matter does not fit prototypical hip hop, you know, not even just his subject matter, but the sound, the cinematic sound that he has kind of made his own. That's nowhere near what normal hip hop or what people consider traditional hip hop. It just doesn't have that sound and it doesn't have that subject matter talked about. And this point right here can break off into multiple different points, but the main ones to me at least are gonna be the fact that because he raps about what he raps about, and that's not seen at, like, normally in hip hop in terms of like the trauma and the depressed and like the entire sound that he's created in terms of darkness, that doesn't resonate with normal hip hop. First. 2, it resonates with a very specific diehard group. And not only that, the demographics of NF listeners, they're also not gonna be the normal demographic of traditional rap listeners. Not only is the artist alienated, so is the fan base. Sure, there's gonna be people like me. Sure, there's gonna be people that like NF as an artist, but most people in general, like if you look at the cold numbers, the like numbers don't lie, they are not going to be people who listen to rap. They're going to be people who listen to NF that alienates him and his fan base. And not saying that that's a bad thing. Obviously he loves his fan base and obviously his fan base loves him and they don't mind not being seen as that. I'm just kind of clarifying in my mind. I'm kind of giving you my thought process as to why. So NF, his sound, and then his fan base, like that alienates it, like it's its own little entity. And on top of that, if you're looking on into his fan base and into the world that he has created and you're looking on from like an outside perspective, a lot of his fan base, because they resonate so heavily with the message that he talks about, they kind of have the same stigma around the fan base as K-pop does. Like they blindly follow K-pop. Any point to mention it, any point to bring NF up, they're going to, and that's just not the reality of what hip hop is. He might be on his fan base like top 10, top 5 rappers ever, but on your general, he's not in my top 10 or my top 20. Like, I don't even think he's in my top 25. And there's nothing wrong with having him as your number 1. All opinions are just that, they're opinions. But if someone who looks on with a hip hop eye and they look in onto that, they're gonna like roll their eyes at the fact that people who have NF as number 1 probably haven't dove into the world of hip hop in the same way. And then on top of that, I already forgot the next point. What are we on? We're on 4. So this is one of my first times, if ever, being critical of NF, so make sure you got your thick skin on. He is not, even though he's gradually and drastically improved, he's never taken a step back on his albums. They've just been going up and up and up. He is not the best rhymer. Like his rhyme schemes, while they are amazing at times, they fall flat at certain times. Like he goes down to 1-syllable rhyme schemes, or he'll go down and he'll try to force things that rhyme that shouldn't rhyme, or there are things that there was an obvious rhyme there that he did not use. For me, because I am heavily critical on rhyme schemes, I'm like, it takes me out of the song whenever I hear him try to force a rhyme. And to me, if you're trying to put an artist in your top 10, top 25, hell, even top 50, like the rhyming piece should come automatic. That shouldn't even be a question. That should automatically be a standard. So the fact that he falls flat sometimes on his rhyme schemes, that's going to be something that people can look to and have a reason to be critical. To me, as someone who likes NF and hip hop, I can definitely understand why. Like hip hop's like, he can't hold a tight rhyme scheme for an extended period. Why would we even put him on? Why would he even put him on as being like one of the greats, especially when Eminem is there to compare to? And I feel like the last thing to realize, and this is one that a lot of people like they forget about, or they don't realize that it makes a difference, especially when we're talking about Eminem and why he's accepted as a white rapper versus NF and why he's not accepted or acknowledged as a white rapper in rap. It's gonna be because of the upbringing that he had. Obviously, he had a sad story. He grew up poor, but I think the thing that like separates them the most, and why Eminem is way more obviously accepted, other than the impact that he's had on rap. I could do a whole video on the impact that Eminem has had on rap. Other than that, Eminem was a student of the game. He was a student of 80s and 90s hip hop. Like he talks about it to this. The boy has LL Cool J as his number 1 rapper of all time, and he's talked about other artists in his songs. He's talked about Big Big Daddy Kane. He's talked about Pac. He's talked about Biggie. He's talked about Jay-Z. He's talked about, like I said, LL Cool J. He clearly respects and understands and has a passion and a diehard passion for the hip hop game. And NF might have a diehard passion for being a rapper or being a hip hop artist. He's just never actually spoke on being a student of the game. So people are way more willing to come over here and accept Eminem because he knows what he's talking about, and he's talked about it in his music before, and you can hear the passion when he does interviews about it, where NF and his fan base, they don't really ever talk about it at all. And it's not saying that he didn't study the game in the same way that Eminem did. I personally don't think that he did, and not that that's a bad thing. It's just this is one of the reasons that keeps him alienated away from rap, at least alienated from the rap culture and being in the conversation with normal hip hop culture. And I'm not saying being alienated from rap or hip hop is a bad thing. Obviously, he likes being that guy. Obviously, his fans like having that connection to, like, if you just don't understand NF and we do, so we have that hyper connection in the same way that 21 Pilots has that connection. With NF and with like 21 Pilots, it's kind of like their fan bases are so tight because it's almost like a, if you know, you know. If you understand why we're so diehard about these artists, then great, welcome in. If you don't, that's completely fine. But we don't even care about being in the mainstream. We don't even care about being talked about in the hip hop like industry, I guess you could say. And that's definitely dope to a certain extent, and it's an appeal of NF and 21 Pilots and being an NF diehard and being a bandito, and like it's all like its own little world over here, and it's so dope. Once you figure out what's going on over here and you accept it, it's dope. But because it's its own world, and because they already have that mentality of if you know, you know, if you don't, you don't, that keeps the world intact. But if you're not willing to come over here to the rap side of things, then why should mainstream rap or mainstream rap culture like be inviting of you to come over? So it's kind of like we don't even want to be part of the masses, and then the masses are like, all right, that's cool, we're just not going to acknowledge you. Y'all do y'all's own thing over there. That's basically why NF, at least in my opinion, is not acknowledged by hip hop and by mainstream hip hop culture. But that's pretty much it for this video. If you have a different opinion on it, or if you want to leave a comment of other topics we can talk about in like this video series, feel free to do so. But I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for listening to me for however long this video is. Follow all the socials, Patreon. This is going to be on Patreon first, so if you want to get early access to these things, definitely follow the Patreon. But other than that, all the links for the socials, Twitch, all in the description. But that brings us to the end of today's video, and like I always say at the end, go out there in the world, love and care for one another, love and care for each other, and I'll catch everybody on the next video. Peace.